So welcome to Keep What You Earn special edition with multiple guests, multiple people here. We are doing Keep What You Earn live right now. And we are sharing our past guests with everyone here who's listening in, enabling you guys to ask questions, to engage live with former guests. And we're going to be doing this again, probably. So I'm so excited to share this format with you guys and all these lovely people who are right here in front of me if you're watching on YouTube. So let's go around and do quick reminders on who we have in the room. And I'm going to start right here with Eric.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everybody. I am a lawyer. I'm living down in South Florida. I focus on entrepreneurs, small, mid-sized businesses, helping them protect everything that they're building and working towards getting together. Thanks for having me back, Shannon.
Absolutely. And you'll remember Eric's episode all about LLCs. I get a ton of great feedback on that episode. So thank you for hopping on in that. I'm going to jump over to Jillian.
What's up? So excited to be here. Jillian Murphy. I have been coined the sales queen, not by myself, but I'm here to jam out on all things sales and business strategies. And super excited to be back here again with you and your guests.
Love it. I'm going to throw it over to Misa.
Hello. Hi again, Shannon. It's Misa. I'm the owner of Perfectly Kept Books, and I focus on bookkeeping. So all things bookkeeping, no one likes it, but I'm here to make it fun because it can be.
Well, I love it. and if you don't love bookkeeping, you'll at least love Misa. That's all I can say. All right. And I'm going to let Christine introduce herself.
Hey, what's up? I'm Christine. I'm a finance manager for small businesses and entrepreneurs. So I basically help them make confident, empowered decisions through financial strategy reporting. And I also do the boring old bookkeeping, which I happen to love.
Yes. And this is why I love them, because they love the stuff that you guys hate. So I see Katie just joined us as well. Katie, let's give a quick 15, 20 seconds. Who are you? How are you?
Hi, good. Sorry, I'm late. It's school drop-off time and all that. I am Katie White. I am the owner of Sense and Balance. I am based out of New Hampshire, and we offer bookkeeping services. So primarily bookkeeping services. It's 98% of what we do to manage day-to-day financials of a company's business, and we do it all virtually.
Awesome. So these are all guests that you've heard on the show before, and we're here to answer your questions. So for all of you who are here live, raise your virtual hand if you have a question. I'd be happy to invite you on the proverbial stage to ask your question and share your thoughts with our guests today. I'm going to kick things off with some of the questions we got via text. And admittedly, we got a few text questions that I can go through, but I actually would love to hear. And this is an interesting one that came in. And I'm going to let you guys tell me, raise your hands on who wants to respond or just jump in. I got a question of what for my guests here, what has been your biggest struggle in business this year?
I'll start off, I suppose, and I think this is probably a common issue for everybody, and it's scaling from my perspective, right? Legal services are often very personalized, professional, fact-specific as to what one person needs or what a client needs, and scaling that service, duplicating myself, duplicating my processes, so I can serve more clients quicker, more efficiently, has been a challenge. But it's not one it's not a challenge. It's not conquerable either.
Love it. Christine?
So funny, Eric. Mine basically was kind of twofold for 2021. One was scaling, and I'd love to have little Christine minions everywhere, but they don't exist yet. So we're working on that. And the other one I think is it's sort of an ongoing process of having the confidence to know that you can grow your business as big as you want it to be, right? So, and I think being in rooms like this is extremely important for that. So thank you, Shannon.
Absolutely. Let's jump over to Jill.
Yes, I would say that probably the largest obstacle that I had in 2021 was team turnover. So really finding yourself a solid team and making sure that they are in their zone of genius, making sure that you have a really good SOP set up so that if somebody does decide to leave or they want to go back to corporate or something like that, you are not left in the dark and you are able to turn over your business to somebody else. And I'm super grateful because I now have a bomb ass team. Sorry, I don't know if I can drop that word on here. Bomb ass team for 2022. So I know we are going to crush it. But I think that would be the biggest thing. That was a great learning lesson for 2021.
Love it. Love it. Misa, share yours.
Oh, for me, it's saying no, because I want to help everyone. They come to you and you're like, oh yes, I can help you. But it's like, I really don't have the capacity for that. But it's like, that's a big thing. Actually having to tell people no. But then the great thing about having others in the same space is being able to at least send them to someone so they're just not left out in the cold. But the hard part is initially just telling them no, although you can help them probably eventually, but just probably not right now.
Love it. Katie?
I think the biggest challenge for Sense of Balance this year was the growth in the team and growing too fast and not having my processes set in place ahead of time. Sorry, my dogs are nuts. So that was definitely a challenge and I felt like I was playing whack-a-mole for most of the year and just trying, unfortunately creating systems after the fact. So definitely that is goal for 2022 is to make sure all the SOPs are done, everything is streamlined. So as I continue to grow and need to bring on somebody new, it'll be seamless and easy and hopefully not be in the same place that I was last year.
That is always the dream. Always the dream. That is what we're all striving to get to. Let me jump back to Eric.
Yeah, I had a question that jumped up as Jillian was mentioning her turnover, and 2021 was the year of the Great Resignation, everybody moving, unemployment rates are through the roof. But I'm curious if Jillian has worked at all to crack the code as to what types of incentives are you using to keep people on your team? Once you find the person, right, which is probably more than half the battle, getting that good player, what are you doing to keep them incentivized and on your team as far as, I don't know, bonuses, equity, anything of that nature? What's your tricks, Jillian?
Well, considering Christine is one of my teammates, I basically, tell her that she can never leave me ever, ever, ever. No, I actually
violence always works. Violence works.
I'm like, you can never leave. I Venmo her money. I pay for her nails. She's living down in Mexico, whatever it takes. I'm like, don't ever leave me. No, I think that, putting people on some sort of an incentivized program is really, really important. And making them part of the team, right? So I'm not looking for task-oriented people. I'm looking for true team members. And I think that a big thing that I did in 2020, in 2021 was I had a lot of task-oriented people that were not truly vested in my business as team members. And I have made a shift to people who are really looking to build an empire with me and looking to really build a foundation. And I think another thing that's really important was I'm looking for people that are looking to help me build my business. They're not necessarily looking to build their business. So I think that was a really big thing as well, is I'm not looking for people who are like, yeah, I'm going to help you build your business in these few hours a week, but I'm also building my business, right? Like they are actually here to help me grow and scale my business, and having those tough conversations, I think is really good. But yes, like incentivizing, having really good conversations, open communications, Venmoing Christine, whatever she needs sometimes, whatever it takes. But I think having really good conversations and really good relationships and lots of very open and honest conversation, I think is very, very good. Christine and I talk. I mean, she's just one of my team members, but her and I talk every single day. And some conversations are good and some conversations are hard. And having those conversations are why people stay.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Couldn't agree more. I love that. Build your empire. Christine, you have your hand up. Let's go.
I was just going to say, but as we're all talking about our struggles, how fortunate are we that they're pretty good struggles, like the struggles of scaling and my business is growing and those are great struggles. And I just wanted to touch on what Jillian said, since I am one of her teammates, as she called me. I think most importantly is having someone that you can be super honest with, makes such a difference. And like for me personally, with all my clients, But Jill does have a little special place in my heart, is I really care about their businesses, right? So I think it's important to find teammates that care as much about your business as they do about their own.
Absolutely. And on that note, let me jump to Misa real quick.
Well, so for me, because I'm a part of the millennial generation, so the people that everyone's talking about. And for me, meeting people where they are and where they're trying to go, because we are in 2022 now. So it's like, it's not the same way, going into an office every day and doing the same. It's not, we're not doing that anymore. So understanding where people are and where they want to go. So, and how flexible they want to be, and what do they really want as their like home life balance with work and all of that, really taking that into consideration versus just saying, this is what you're going to do for 8 hours a day. And there's no bending or moving on that. And that's been a really big thing, is really understanding where people are so that you can meet them there. And then they're more inclined to stay and actually want to help you because you're helping them in return.
Yeah. And
Nisa, now you're talking about servant leadership, right? And that's a key part of it, I think. Right.
mm-hmm. And talking about goals, and I would love for you all to share, and by all means, guys, raise your hands if you want to jump in on this conversation, because this is all very open. But I want to share, what are you using to set your 2022 goals? How are you setting those goals? What do they look like? How are you defining those goals? Are they in metrics? Are they in numbers? What are you doing? Is it vision boards? Are you manifesting? What are we doing to picture? I see some giggles. What are we doing to picture what we want our life to look like? Yes, Jill, in 2022, a year from now. How do we envision our goals? And I would love to hear the thoughts from our guests and from anyone in the room on how they are successfully figuring out what their goals are for this year.
So I'll jump on real quick. One, I am not a manifester, so that's why I was giggling, because I believe that you actually have to have some strategy and have to actually do the work backwards. So I backward design all of my goals. So what I mean is I look at my year, what I actually want to accomplish, whether it's income goals, impact goals, whatever that is, and then I backwards design it for what I'm going to create. So if it's a certain amount of income, a certain amount of impact, a certain amount of leads, whatever that is, and then I backwards design it. I don't have anything fancy. I run my entire life and business off of 2 whiteboards that are in my office, but I always have my goals in front of me at all times. So I know exactly what it is that I'm hitting. So I always say, see the target, hit the target, see the target, hit the target. If we don't know what we're hitting, we're most likely not going to get to it. So I think it's really, really, really important. And I see a lot of times, if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you're an entrepreneur of some sort, an online coach. We're just kind of doing the next thing. I'm just going to do this launch and I'm not really sure what the next thing is, or I'm just going to host this masterclass. I don't really know what the next thing is. If you actually do it backwards, you always have a plan of what that next thing is. So again, figure out what that goal is and then backwards design it. And I think that that's the easiest way to do it. And then you can throw a little bit of manifestation in there if that's your jam.
Totally. And you're noticing, anyone who's listening to this is noticing, wait, these are all the guests you've had on the show. These are experts. These are leaders in their areas. These are folks who know a crap ton about what they do. And why aren't they just talking about that? Because they are business owners just like you. And we all have our own struggles. We all have our own ways of doing things. And nobody has quite figured it out in all areas of their business. So this is actually a really fun conversation with you all to unpack a bit more of that. Anyone else want to chime in with their goal setting strategies? I'm happy to share mine too. Misa.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I do very much the same as Jillian, right? I start at the end of the year. What's the end goal? Just take for revenue perspective. And then, I back into it and say, all right, each month I need to make this much. And then what's the product mix that I have that I'm offering, and how many of those do I want to sell each month, et cetera. So I think Jillian's framework is perfect, and it's very pliable to any type of business, right? You start with the end objective, and then you back into the bite-sized pieces, whether it's quarterly, monthly, et cetera. And I do the same thing in my law practice.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I everything's cash flow for me. Everything's all about cash flow forecast. It's all fun. Christine's giggling because she's like, yeah, that's my jam too. I'm going to jump. I probably just stole your thunder. But I'm going to jump over from Misa and then back to Christine.
For me, usually what I like to start with is, because a big thing, especially over the last year, has been, what do I actually want? Like, what do I want for my business? What do I want to see? Because within, the accounting, bookkeeping world, you see what everyone else is doing. And it's like, oh, do I need to be doing that? Do I need to offer all these services? So it's like, really, okay, no, what do I actually want to do for myself? Where do I want, how big do I want to grow? How small do I want? Just like really understanding the answers to those questions, and then saying, okay, now that I have my core understanding and foundation, now I know which way I need to go.
Absolutely. Anchor it to a foundation of some kind, a core goal. And actually a mentor of mine, I got to give him credit, from Mike King, who told me this, that goals are just in between your vision and your priorities. So you have a vision, you set the vision. What do you want your life to look like? What are the conditions of your life when you found you've been successful? Then what are the goals you have to accomplish to get there, to that finish line? And then what are your priorities in order to make sure you're meeting your goals? And it's kind of it's an exercise that I always encouraged employees when I was a manager to do, and I still do in my business, is open up your calendar and see what your priorities are. And does that align to what you said your priorities were or your goals? Because more often than not, in reality, they're not always in line. And you have to kind of catch yourself, especially as entrepreneurs. There's nobody calling us out unless we pay for it, really. There's nobody calling us out and calling us on our BS and saying, yeah, you're not really spending your time on what your goals are right now. And there's too many shiny objects. There's too many different things that we all feel like we should be doing right now. And you've got to prioritize, or you're going to drown in all of the things that you have to do, including the bookkeeping and the taxes and all the legal stuff and all the other stuff that we have experts here on. So that's why we exist. Cool. Well, I'm going to open up the floor if you guys have any questions, and I'm going to dive back into the other ones that I had here. Now we have a couple of specific questions. And I actually have a specific question that came in for Jill. And the question was, how do you overcome your fear of coming across as too salesy to succeed like you do? They complimented you on your confidence. It's like, how do I overcome this weird mental block I have about selling my services?
I love this question. I probably get, if I had $1 for every single time someone asked me like how not to be salesy, I could literally probably retire. So when someone asks me, how do I come across as not being salesy? The number one thing that I always say is, are you sold on what you're selling? Because if you are sold on what you're selling, you never feel salesy, right? I love that I sell sales consulting. I love that I sell business coaching. So I'm so excited to share it with everybody on this podcast. I'm so excited to tell everybody about it every single day. I'm excited when I go to the gym and people ask me what it is that I do. So I'm excited about it because I'm sold on it. When I feel salesy is when I'm trying to sell something that is not in integrity and doesn't light me up and isn't in alignment. That's when it feels gross, right? Like if I was trying to sell something, if I was trying to sell manifestation to somebody, I would feel salesy because I'd be like, I'm trying to push something on you that like isn't really in an alignment with me. It doesn't really feel good to me, right? So that's when it would be like, I'm trying to push something on you that isn't in alignment with what I'm doing. So ask yourself, are you in alignment with what it is that you're selling? Are you so incredibly excited about what it is that you're selling? That's the first piece. The second piece is sometimes we just lack a little bit of inner confidence, right? Like we're just not super confident people. So I always say, step into somebody else's confidence. Maybe it's Beyonce, maybe it's Elena Cardone, maybe it's whoever it is, like step into that person and borrow their confidence before you go into your sales call, your sales presentation, any of those things. Quick story for you. I did a masterclass yesterday. Before I got on it, I stepped into Elena Cardone and I was like, Elena, you got this. You absolutely got this. My screen started going wacky. My mic was echoing. People were coming in. I was getting all crazy. And I was like, Elena, calm down. Because I was in that confidence, like persona. So sometimes we have to borrow somebody else's confidence if we don't have it yet ourselves. So it was like kind of like two-folded. So step into your inner Beyonce, Elena, Shannon, me, whoever it is, and borrow it for a little bit until you have to.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I'm going to start calling you Elena.
Do it. I love it. I'm gladly take it.
I love it. I'm going to switch gears. I have a couple of specific questions for you guys. And this next question actually came up for Eric. And it's so funny because this is a subject of a previous conversation you and I have had. And it is, what is the difference? And I can help with this too, but what is the difference between having a legal entity and what people are calling a tax entity for your business?
Yeah, that is a great question. And you and I run into that so many times. So for example, this mostly comes up with limited liability companies, right? If you have a business entity, you have to have a tax ID number. And when you're filing for that tax ID number, as an LLC, for example, the IRS doesn't recognize limited liability companies as entities. So they default to either an S Corp or a partnership taxation or a sole proprietorship. And the point is that the IRS looks at your entity completely different than the Secretary of State where you're filed. They're just, and I know it's hard for people to get their mind around, like, what do you mean I've got two different, I'm an S Corp. Well, no, you're not. You're a limited liability company with an S Corp election for tax filing purposes. So they are two different elections or two different ways to look at your business. One's from a tax lens, one's from a legal entity perspective from the Department of State, wherever you're operating.
So I have a funny way of explaining this. I say, having the S corporation is like putting a nice outfit when you're going out to like a gala. Then that's the federal. Like when you go out of the house, you go to the IRS, you're wearing a nice outfit. Come back home, you're in sweatpants. You're an LLC.
Yeah, there you go. I like. So
in your home state, you're just Shannon. When you dressed up, it's like, oh, who the hell is this? And that's exactly like an S corp is just getting all dolled up so that you can get better treatment.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Cool. So, and this is another one that came up, and this is from my trio, my Katie, Christine, and Misa. You guys can, raise your hands or jump in as you want to, but there are a lot of people right now asking me, a lot of people. It is January while we're recording this, by the way. And a lot of folks are hopping into my DMs, in my text messages, and my emails everywhere. I didn't do my books in 2021 and I don't know what to do. And I need to file my taxes. What do I do? And what would you say to them? But also, what would you say to them from a helpful standpoint? Obviously, I know you guys know the answer to this. What do? You get it done. But there's a lot of people who have shame around this and feel embarrassed, even just admitting that. So I would love to know what you have to say to the entrepreneur who maybe feels like they're so behind right now. What words of encouragement do you have for them?
One of the first things I tell people when I talk to people and they come to me and they're just like, oh, my stuff is probably a mess and I haven't done anything. The first thing I say is like, you're not alone. Like I let them know. I said, it's not only you. There are plenty of other people just out there just like you who probably haven't done it. And actually some of them who probably look worse. Cause I'm like, I've seen it all. So I just reassure them that they're not alone and it's really okay. And like when I'm walking through how to do bookkeeping with people and I like explain it and show them, this is what you need to do. These are the steps. This is why. And it's like a light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, this makes sense. Now I know why I need to do it. And usually they get a little bit excited. And I'm like, yes, this is what I want to see. I want your excitement for the bookkeeping because I'm like, you have to understand the purpose of the bookkeeping. It's not just to file taxes. Yes, you do want to file taxes, but you also want to run your business. And how can you run your business without knowing what's going on in your finances? So when I put it all together and just really just break it down, that kind of helps to kind of reassure them that, okay, this is something I need to get on top of. And then also not to be so freaked out and afraid just because they haven't done it yet.
Absolutely. Christine?
Funny, I always start out my conversations the same way, Misa. I always tell every time I have this talk with a client, I was like, this might be brutally honest, but you're not alone, you're not special, and you're not unique. There are a million other people in your spot. And There's probably people way worse than you. And also I usually tell them the IRS and or CRA up here in Canada are not going to come put you in jail. Like, yes, late fees and penalties suck, but you're not going to jail. So it's okay. I literally had a client ask me that one time. They're like, is CRA like going to arrest me? I'm like, no, no, they will not.
No, I get that question all the time about the IRS. And I go, no, they're not going to feed you for free on their own dollar. No, they're not going to pay for your food and your housing. That's not what we're here for. We're not going to do that. Trust me, they don't want to put anyone in jail. They would rather just get their money, as much of it as they can, and get out of your hair and go back to their offices where they have printers and computers from like the 1980s and carry on their business. I make fun of them all the time. You guys know this. I make fun of them all the time. You could play Oregon Trail on the computers they use for our taxes. I've got a million of these. So great. We actually have a question that came in, and I'm gonna jump it right back to Eric. So when does someone know that they want to, let's see, how do I know whether to move from a sole prop to an LLC or another entity type, and should I?
Yeah, this is a great question. And it's one that we talked about on my first podcast with you. I never recommend doing business as a sole proprietor, just from a liability perspective. And I'll share a quick anecdote here, quick story. Many years ago, when I was just in law school and not as well trained, my wife was teaching a class in home, and she was teaching baby sign language. She had a toddler over the house, mom sitting there having coffee, whatever. Toddler stumbles, smacks his head on the fireplace, splits his forehead open, needs stitches, all this, and just my heart sinks, because she was operating that business as a sole proprietorship. And what started racing through my heart and my mind is everything we own, our house down in Virginia, is all now at risk. And we've put ourselves in liability perspective if these parents decide to sue us. So what was a very innocent sole proprietorship with a very low risk of any types of lawsuits quickly changed, right? And luckily nothing happened there. But it's reasons like that I recommend never operating as a sole proprietorship. Create yourself your business entity, limited liability company, partnership, or corporation. Those are the other three legal entities to choose from, and then separate out your personal liabilities from what you're doing in your business. And I'll always recommend, usually 99% of the time, an LLC, because it has the most flexibility. You kind of get the best of all those legal entities by setting up a limited liability company. So that's a good question. So I would move away from sole proprietorship into an LLC as soon as possible.
And how does someone actually do that?
Yeah, so there's three things you need to do to create your limited liability company. And that is, you file and you get your tax ID number. You file your articles of organization with your Secretary of State, where you're residing or operating from. And then you create an operating agreement. And I can give some people some additional guidance if they reach out to me separately. But those three things are what you need. And then you're up and running. You keep your same sole proprietor name that you're operating under, and you'll be much more insulated.
Excellent. And let's say I'll cap it off with this one follow-on question. Let's say someone has an LLC, but they move states. What are their options in terms of, can they bring the LLC and the EIN with them and keep stuff, or do they have to dissolve and restart? And what do you see is most common?
Yeah, another good question. I've done this. I actually just did this last week for a client. They wanted to move their entity from Texas to New York, but they wanted to file in Delaware as a domestic company in Delaware. So we just moved it. We did articles of conversion into the state of Delaware, got that all approved, and then we'll take those articles of organization and create articles of organization in the state of New York, just as a foreign entity. So they're operating in those states. And then we'll let the articles in the state of Texas dissolve. So it's an article of conversion, and you can move from one state to another. The only thing you have to check is whether that company name is being used in the state that you want to transfer to. But it's not real hard. You pay, $100 to $300 filing fee to the state, and do the right paperwork, and you'll be all set.
Fantastic. Now, switching over for a little bit, we got a question for my girls here. What is a common monthly fee I should expect to pay for an accountant? Also, what's a common fee to pay for tax prep? Now, you guys know where I'm going to go with this. An accountant can do a whole lot of things. So if you're saying what's a monthly fee for an accountant, let's unpack that for 1 second. And I'm going to ask my bookkeepers here, let's offer a couple of ideas of ranges that you've seen. You don't have to give your pricing, but let's share some ideas of, someone with a lower budget may have a misconception that they can't afford a bookkeeper or that they can't afford bookkeeping. So what are the different options for someone if they're shopping around? Let's say they're looking for a bookkeeper to start with, and then I'll layer on with tax prep. Misa?
I've seen a range. So it really, it depends on what you need. I will say that. So sometimes maybe you just need someone to help you get it set up and teach you how to do it so that you can do it maybe you can't afford it full on right now. That's fine. But maybe you just need help, one-time fee, someone teach you how to do it. And that can range as well. I've seen people charge less than $100. I can't guarantee what you're going to get, but it can go all the way up to $500-$600 just for bookkeeping alone. Like, we're not even getting into anything out of the bookkeeping realm. So the price varies depending on what you need. So like I said, you can get some cheaper options, but just know you're getting what you pay for. So if you do see someone who has bookkeeping services that are a little bit higher, the quality is probably a little bit better, just in my opinion from what I've seen. So that's something to keep in mind.
I'll add in, I'll let Katie chime in and then Yaremi. But I'll add in here and say, I think a lot of folks don't realize that there's different service offerings that certain people give you and certain people don't. So what you want to be clear on is, what are you paying for? Because if you're just paying for someone to reconcile the books and you're paying them $1,000 a month, that doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't necessarily mean you're getting high quality. You want to make sure you're getting the most services for what you're paying for and done right. And you also want to make sure you trust the person that is worth the money, if you trust the person to get it done right. Because I'll tell you, I have inherited a lot of former bookkeepers' work, as I know all my girls here have, that you're going, oh, you saved a lot of money then, but you're going to make up for it with me because we got to go back and clean it up. So invest in getting it done right the first time is my best advice. And I'll let Katie chime in.
So I think there's a couple of things that people maybe just have kind of misconceptions on. So one, people think of bookkeepers as just data entry, and some bookkeepers are just data entry, and they say, oh yeah, I used to do this for this company and I entered data, or I did accounts payable. And it's, that's just a portion of the full like bookkeeping monthly reconciliation functionality of being a bookkeeper. I mean, it's only just one little sliver. So people think, oh, I need a bookkeeper. They're thinking data entry, and they're thinking, oh, well, so-and-so I go online and I see so-and-so get a job as a bookkeeper for $15 an hour. But then when you go to outsource and you get like, you're in full sticker shock. So people who might be charging hourly upwards, I mean, I've seen it anywhere from $35 an hour. I know bookkeepers who charge $100 an hour for hourly. And then, some people do flat pricing, monthly pricing, maybe a tiered scale, anywhere from $250. I know I personally have a client that's around $1,500 a month, and she's probably going to keep continuing to go up as she grows. So it's really, that misconception of that hourly rate of, I Googled what a bookkeeper makes and they make $15 an hour. You got to remember, these people are working in an office. They're probably full-time, they're getting benefits, they have all their equipment supplied for them, so it's just kind of like this full package. But you're not offering that. I mean, you're not, most people who are looking for outsourced bookkeepers aren't looking to hire a bookkeeper as a W-2 employee. So I think, they just have to kind of remember that aspect of it. And when you're looking at outsourced bookkeeping, most of us are, just like these other small business owners, and we are making a living. This is our livelihood. This is our job. This is paying our bills and our food and our children's education. So I think, you can expect, I mean, like Misa just said, you pay for what you get. And a lot of people are like, oh, I want to use Wave apps because it's a free bookkeeping app. Fine, do it. But you are paying for, like, you get what you pay for, right? It's free. So you don't get a lot. And I think it's just trying to remind people of this thing. Usually the more expensive a bookkeeper is, more experience they have, or more of a team, more support, more eyes maybe looking at the books. So just things to keep in mind. And I've also cleaned up plenty of a mess.
Oh, yes. And I think most folks are hesitant to invest because it feels like, oh, I'm just not at a level yet where I'm ready for complex bookkeeping or anything like that. And I always say it's always best to set the tone with, if you can manage 3 or 4 transactions a month really well, then when, hundreds are coming in, you're set. You don't have to worry about stressing yourself out. Yaremi, I would love for you to chime in here. Yaremi? All right, I'm going to jump to Christine.
I was just going to say, when we were talking about fee structure too, like me personally, I run my business in a tiered platform. I do a little bit of one-off, but I do tiered. So, I mean, it kind of depends. Essentially, it depends to how much touch time they want with me and what do they need for their business. Do they need forecasting and projections? If so, then that's going to cost you more than, say, just someone who goes in and categorizes your transactions in QuickBooks Online and does your bank rec, right? And the other thing, I think, when someone says like, how much is an accountant a month? Well, depends. Do you actually want an accountant? Do you want a bookkeeper? Do you want a financial advisor? Like, I think sometimes people see finance professional and they think that we know everything about everything that has to do with finance, which is not true. So yeah, I think it's just keeping in mind, knowing like what your needs are, and then finding the right person for that to fit that, I don't want to say mold, but you know what I mean.
Oh, totally. And I knew we were going to go there with, well, do you need an accountant? And I think accountant is the broad term that we use and paints a broad brush over a lot of what we do. Kind of like if we're talking about Jill and we're saying a coach, and it's like, well, what kind of coach, what kind of person are you looking for? What problem are you looking to solve? Because then we can prescribe the right person for you. And I think that people assume that they're going to have to hire an accountant monthly and it's going to cost them a ton of money. And it's like, no, you can actually layer that. Like, we can start with the books, right? Start with getting the books right. On the CFO and tax side, I'll address this one. And on the CFO and tax side, it's going to be based on the value you're getting. So if you're getting a ton of tax strategy, you're getting CFO services, and you're walking away from your conversation with let's say your fractional CFO, and you feel like, I'm super clear on my goals, I know what I need to go do, I have direction, I have clarity. That's what you want. And that's what you're fortunately going to pay for. So that's really the level of detail that you need and the level of support you need and touch points is going to be a function of what you pay. And also, it's going to be higher level touch point, higher level services for higher businesses that have, new levels, new devils, right? So if you're making multi-millions of dollars, there's a lot more different problems you're going to have than the person who's making 50K, and a lot more complex issues and a lot more at stake. So it will be reflected in the risk that you're taking, the risk that they're taking, and the complexity of your work to make sure that you've got the right services in place for what you're paying for. As for taxes, here's an interesting thing. So I want to just bring this up real quick. And when it comes to taxes, there is such a myth out there when it comes to taxes that I need somebody to do my taxes, and that we churn out paperwork, like we're doing the tax returns, and that's your service. Okay. So here's the thing. We do tax returns over here at Financial. We do, but those are transactional. It is, you give me the stuff, I fill out the forms, we give you the forms back and tell you what you're going to owe or what you're going to get back in a refund. And it's pretty one-dimensional, honestly. Where you really start to save the money and make back your return is in strategy. Is if you have somebody on your team who will say, have you thought about hiring your kids? Have you thought about taking your home office? Have you thought about deducting your next trip to Scottsdale when you're meeting with this person? Have you thought about these things to minimize your taxes without changing your behavior? And when you start thinking strategically around taxes is when you save all your money. And that's what we focus here on the podcast all the time, is sharing these strategies with you. But I think that most folks don't realize that your tax preparer at H&R Block, who's charging you $75, is not thinking strategically about your business. They are filling in forms and filling out a checklist. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But to what Misa was saying before, do you want someone who's filling out the checklist for you, or do you want someone who's thinking about you when they see the news and thinking about how it affects you? And that's what you're paying for when you get to a higher level service. And I think that gets lost in translation by thinking everyone who does taxes just does taxes. So, and I know Yaremi, you're back, so I would love to hear your thoughts on our conversation.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can. How are you?
Okay, perfect. Yes, I think the biggest thing is if someone is looking at it as I'm not ready to make this investment on a monthly or quarterly or whatever the case is I would say really invest into like meeting with someone where you can do a like one-time meeting and then maybe put in the work as an owner of a business, right? And learning and maybe meeting with this person, say, hey, can we meet like once a month on, an hour, and can you teach me? Because then they're still investing and not spending all this money they may not have at the moment, especially when they're starting out. But I would say really invest into learning on how to do it on your own and hiring someone that knows what they're doing, on just whatever you can afford.
And Yaremi, can you just give a quick intro on who you are for our listeners?
Yeah, so my name is Yaremi. Most people call me Remy because they can't pronounce my name. And I am a bookkeeper. Yeah, so my company's QB Numbers.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. And Misa, you had something to add too.
Just adding to what Yaremi just said, like, especially when you're starting out, you can take it step by step. And what I always tell people, especially the ones where I'm teaching them how to do their books, I'm like, I'm teaching you how to do it so that when you do hire it out, at least you have a good foundation and you can kind of keep an eye on what they're doing. Because how do you know the person you hired is doing your books correctly? You won't. If you have no clue, they can do whatever they want, and people do. They can do whatever they want, and you have no idea. So it's like teaching, like understanding as a business owner, you at least want to have the good foundation because you need to understand what's going on in your business at least a very basic level, because you don't want to just start hiring people and then you have no idea what's going on, and they're telling you, oh, this is okay, or this, and you're like, I guess I don't really know. It's really having that understanding because it's your business and you should know everything that's going on. You don't always have to do it at all points of time, but you should at least know what's going on.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So I want to start putting a bow on this, and I want to go around and again, raise your hands here in the Zoom chat if when you want to answer, but I would love to hear your thoughts from my guests on what it means to you or what you do to keep more of what you earn. In the theme of this podcast, what does keeping more of what you earn mean to you?
I'll go first. It's minimizing my expenses. So I take all the revenue I get. I want as much of that revenue to transfer from my business bank account into my personal bank account. And I do that by minimizing expenses. But the key to it, and you and all the bookkeepers here really have kind of hit the nail on the head. You can't really do that unless you understand your numbers. And if you're just out there generating revenue, selling your product or service, but you're not keeping an eye on your numbers, there's no way that you're going to be maximizing, keep what you earn. So hire the right professionals and make sure you're understanding your numbers. It's so critical in any business.
Mm-hmm. I always say you can't out exercise a bad diet, and you can't out earn bad spending. And I think that
Right.
even if you have the sales queen on your team, even if you have her, if you have my girl Jill and she's helping you with your sales, if you're putting that into a bucket without a bottom, it doesn't really help. Right, Jill?
I got a lot of very profitable people that I work with that are still not making any money in their business because I teach them how to sell a ton of their products and they're still spending way quicker. So that is so true. Ange.
And now you know who to call. Any of these ladies here, including your gal Christine, right? Amazing, amazing. Anyone else? What are your thoughts on how do I keep more of what I earn? Misa.
For me, I always look at it as what type of life am I trying to create? And what is it going to cost me to get there? And then also, how much money do I need to get there? So like to keep what I earn, I need to be able to reach that, climb that mountain and get there. And so, of course, it goes back to what do my numbers look like? And so you can actually plan and say, I need X amount, and you can work around that. But really starting off to say, well, what do I actually want? Like, am I trying to be $1 million business and, earn 6 figures? Or am I just trying to do I want to live pretty low key and I just need to be able to, maintain my, my small little life. It depends on you personally. So always not really paying attention to what everyone else is doing and saying, but actually looking at yourself and saying, this is the life I want to create. How can I create it? And then you can go look at your numbers and say, okay, how can I make these numbers work so that I can create that life that I see for myself?
Perfect. Katie.
Yeah, I was going to really just kind of piggyback off both what Eric and Misa were saying is, what does that, keeping what I earn, what does that mean to me? It does mean, exactly what Eric said. I want to, the revenue that I'm generating, that gross revenue I'm generating, I want to keep most of it. And to figure that out, like Misa said, you kind of reverse engineer, what are my goals? So planning, what are my short-term goals? What are my long-term goals? I mean, I want to retire by my time my daughter's out of college, right? I don't want to work forever. I want to be able to, so I have these goals in place. So how do I do that? I get to keep more. And this kind of goes back to the whole tax thing and business owners thinking, oh, I need deductions because I need to spend money because I don't want to pay as much in taxes. And really, I try to change that thought process for them because that's not getting them to what they really want in life and why are they in business in the first place.
Totally. Yes, exactly. And I actually just posted on Instagram this past week with a post that actually was pretty popular that was just said, your business is not here to entertain you. You're actually here to make money. And I think that you can have a higher purpose in your business. You can have a mission. You can have goals that are beyond the impact that you want to make. But at the end of the day, to enable you to do that, you've got to fuel it with cash flow. You've got to fuel it with money to be able to make that happen. Christine, your thoughts?
I keep more of what I earn, and I'm going to say the B word. I budget. Everyone gets all freaked out and hates that word. But I do. Not necessarily down to the penny, but I track cash flow. Where are we spending cash? We talk about in our family, with my husband and I, what do we want to spend on this and on that? What do we want to do in our life and those kind of things? And I mean, does it always stay on track? No, nothing ever does. But we try and stick to a budget. And I know it's such a boring answer, but it's true.
I know. Leave it to my fellow accountants to give the practical answers. Yaremi, your thoughts?
So my first thought is I want to keep my peace, right? Because I feel like we all get so wrapped up in trying to be perfect and trying to be to the T with everything. So for me, it's going back to kind of what Misa said is figure out what my individual goal as a business. So I feel like people need to really focus on that. What do you want out of it? And then the other thing that I want to say is one of your posts really, I was wow, that's so true. You said, stop focusing on how not to pay taxes, but focus on how to do a strategy, right? And it's that was it was a light bulb, yes, because most of my clients are I don't want to pay this. I don't want to pay this. And it's okay, what if you really invest on things that are going to help you grow and do well rather than saying, let me just buy a new car because it'll reduce my taxes. things like that. So it's just really being strategic on what you're spending your money on, investing, and actually putting in the work after you take that workshop, and not just take it as a deduction, but put in the work that you're learning in what you're investing on.
Yeah. And the analogy I always use is invest in learning the rule book or getting a copy of the rule book instead of trying to cheat. And that's so important, because if you're caught cheating, you lose all credibility and trust, and then they won't believe anything you say. The best thing you can do, I see everyone's nodding for those listening. Everyone is nodding like, yes, because the best thing you can do is learn how to play by the rules, but freaking win with the rule book on your side instead of feeling like you have to cheat to win. And I think a lot of business owners out there are thinking, I have to cheat in order to win. You don't, but that's what we're here for, because we know the rules and we can tell you how to navigate them. All right. Well, I'm going to put a bow on this and wrap up here, and just thank you all for your time in taking the time to be here and to share your knowledge with everyone and share your thoughts. It's been extremely valuable. I hope you all got so much out of this. And every single guest who's been on this show today is going to be in the show notes. We're going to reshare everything. And if you particularly enjoyed the input of any of our guests today, they've all been on our show. So you can go back and hear an entire episode with our guests and go revisit the content that you know and love that they've given you before if you want more information. And do please reach out, follow them on social media. All of their links will be in the show notes and their handles. So I just want to thank you all so much for being here, and wish you all the best. And thank you for joining us and listening.